Welcome to our very first episode of Small Business File, where we aim to be the most valuable 15 minutes of business information in your week. Later we'll be speaking with media coach Susan Blake on how to prepare for a media interview. But first, here's the news. On Monday, the U.S. Senate passed Bill 743, also called the Marketplace Fairness Act of 2013. The bill now heads for the House, where its future is uncertain. If it passes, it would mean that online retailers would have to track and collect sales tax for the 45 states that impose it. The law affects online sellers with over $1 million in sales outside of states where they have physical operations. eBay is lobbying to exempt small businesses with under $10 million in sales or fewer than 50 employees. Supporters of the bill claim that it would level the playing field for small brick-and-mortar retailers. Opponents view it as a tax increase and say it would add an overly complicated burden of calculating tax rates for different states and localities. Under current law, online sellers are not required to collect tax unless they have physical presence in the state. While most states require residents to pay a so-called use tax on out-of-state purchases, most consumers don't report them. That adds up to over $12 billion annually in what some say is additional and some view as lost sales taxes. A survey of about 2,500 consumers by Alex Partners shows that if the law is passed, 30% of online shoppers would shop at brick-and-mortar retailers more frequently, but nearly half claimed that it would have no effect on their online shopping habits. The bill enjoyed bipartisan support in the Senate, where it passed 69 to 27. Supporters of the bill include President Obama, Amazon.com, and the National Retail Federation. Opponents include Grover Norquist, Senators Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Rand Paul. More to come on this. New research shows that 82% of marketers who blog on a daily basis report a positive return on investment for their overall inbound marketing efforts. Among those who only blog monthly, 57% report positive ROI. The 2013 State of Inbound Marketing Report, just published by HubSpot, also reports that 34% of businesses cannot or do not calculate ROI. So these numbers might be even higher if all companies had the means to measure marketing ROI. Women-owned small businesses can now win larger contracts from the federal government. In a rule change this week, the SBA lifted the caps on government contracts set aside for women-owned and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. Previously, under the Women-Owned Small Business Program, federal government set-aside contracts were capped at $6.5 million for manufacturing contracts and $4 million for all other contracts. The move will help the federal government meet its mandate of 5% of contracts going to women-owned small businesses. Small business employers hired an average of 0.14 workers per firm in April, according to the latest Small Business Jobs Report, to be released next week by the National Federation of Independent Business. This is the fifth monthly gain recorded by the NFIB, but the number is slightly lower than in March. 49% of owners surveyed hired or tried to hire in the last 3 months, and of those, 78% reported few or no qualified applicants for open positions. NFIB chief economist William Dunkelberg said, "The big news is that job creation plans rose 6 points to a net 6% of small employers now planning to increase total employment in the next 3 months. This is a nice improvement over the 4-point decline in hiring plans we saw in March." According to the ADP National Employment Report, small businesses added 50,000 jobs in April, with 67% attributed to very small businesses, which they define as under 19 employees. Over 82% of these jobs are in providing services, with only 18% of jobs producing goods. Just as some fear that the sequester could eliminate over $900 million in small business loan guarantees from the federal budget, peer-to-peer investment is making some news. San Francisco-based Lending Club, one of the oldest and largest peer-to-peer lenders, may soon offer small business loans. In an interview with Peter Renton on his Lending Academy blog, Lending Club's COO Scott Sanborn said, "We have record investor demand, including specific interest in small businesses as an asset due to its short duration and attractive yield. We want to begin the development process, but be deliberate in our execution." When asked about the time frame, Sanborn said, We plan to begin making the loans in less than a year. This news comes right on the heels of another big announcement from Lending Club that Google is taking the lead in a significant $125 million investment in Lending Club. Lending Club will not be the first to offer peer-to-peer small business loans. Instead, they're joining others like Kabbage, Lendio, SomoLend, and Endurance Lending. This is also not Google's first interest in this area. It's been reported that Google Ventures is leading a $17 million investment in OnDeck Capital. As of now, OnDeck has funded more than $450 million in loans to small businesses. If your business appeals to children and is online or involves a mobile app, you should be aware of changes to the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act that go into effect in July. The COPA ruling is enforced by the FTC and gives parents control over what personal information websites can collect from children under the age of 13. Key changes expand COPA to apply to online apps as well as websites. The new rules also extend the types of personal information covered by COPA to include geolocation information, cookies, IP addresses, and mobile IDs, as well as audio, photos, and video that contain a child's image. Links to more information on this story and all our stories are provided in the program notes. Next up, former news anchor Susan Blake talks with us about preparing yourself for a media interview.
So you have a media interview coming up and you want to make the most of it. To help you sharpen your communication skills, we're talking with Susan Blake. In her career as a TV news anchor and reporter in one of the top 5 markets, San Francisco, and nationally on HGTV, Susan has interviewed foreign leaders, top U.S. politicians, and Hollywood celebrities. She has reported from the floor of political conventions and worked on documentaries in India, Japan, the Middle East, and Mexico. What I guess we want to get to, what are the most important things that people need to know if they're going to be interviewed on, for either a television program or even on the web?
So if someone is called or they're making a request to interview you, there are some of the very basic questions that you need to ask. You need to know really who is the reporter that's calling you, and what organization do they work for, and how is that interview actually going to be used? And there are a lot of different things to take into consideration with that. First of all, is it print or is it on camera?
Right.
What kind of media is it? It could also be radio as well. And is this something that's going to be used on the evening news? Are you going to be put on an interview program where you're on for 30 minutes talking about a subject, or are you on with a panel of people talking about a number of different topics? If this is a piece for the evening news, they may talk to you for 4 or 5 minutes on camera as a preparation interview. They're probably only going to be pulling 15 seconds or maybe 10 seconds, a couple of different times to put in a package that ultimately at best would be 1 minute and 30 seconds. So they're going to weave a story around that.
What are the most important things that people need to, as soon as they get the call, what do they need to start thinking about?
So think about it in terms of maybe 1 to 3 messages that you really, at most maybe 3 messages in a typical interview that may just be going for 5 minutes. I've got 3 things I really want to focus on, and I want to bring these points home. Think about in terms of really being knowledgeable, making sure you understand the market and what you're going up against. How do I separate myself or my company from someone else? This is an opportunity for me to use this to really explain something or to really market my organization. As well, you probably want to do enough research that you know your subject really well. Are there any aspects that maybe you're not aware of? So you just need to make sure you're really comfortable and knowledgeable. Once you have that knowledge, that brings you more of the confidence of what it is you're going to talk about.
So one last thing on preparation. The reporter is coming out to your place, from a news organization. they might want to shoot some additional material. Talk about how people...
Anytime you're talking about on camera, you know, where you're adding that other dimension of the visual. And so oftentimes they will ask you, do you have a photograph of this, or do you happen to have B-roll? Anything that would support your story that you're telling that is a visual component. If you're marketing yourself and you're using this interview as an opportunity to tell your story and market yourself, then begin to think, as a business, do I already need to be shooting B-roll, or what are some of those visual supports? If you have any other marketing materials, that's always something that's good to think about. Also, that helps tell your story. Like, remember, we talked about the preparation and what are your 1 or 2 or 3 points that you really want to talk about. If you have the visual support to go with that, those two can come together and really tell a strong, powerful story for you.
Right, and having been on the producer's end, sometimes if the business owner can tell me what to shoot, so we're there with the camera, it's like, oh, shoot this person doing this, it helps to tell my story.
Or if you have, you know, if it is a restaurant that you're just opening up, and you know, maybe it was like your grandmother inspired you with all of her great Italian or Mexican food or whatever it was. It's like, you know, hey, here's a picture of my grandmother.
Oh, yeah,
you know, this is where the story started for me. That really gets into that personal component of, wow, this person really has a great idea and this means something to them. It becomes a personal story then that you're sharing with other people, and that's always a great connection.
Yeah, and it helps the producer to tell the story.
Yeah, exactly. People sitting at home listening to an interview are looking for something that they can connect with, that is going to speak to their heart, or is going to speak to them in a way that then your story or your product becomes memorable to them.
Check out our full interview with Susan Blake, where, among other things, she tells us how to integrate your voice and body language to communicate your message.
But it's speaking to what it is you're saying. So it's a filter that everything is going through when the bottom line is you want them to hear your message. So the value in practicing is that you are getting all of these other layers of your voice and the body language, you know, fine-tuned so that they can hear what it is you have to say.